Hi, I'm Ludic Ryan. Today I'd like to talk about Cuphead by tracing the genealogy of its structure. Cuphead is categorised as a shoot 'em up, or more specifically a run and gunner, but we can identify its core structure as following that of Titan Souls and Shadow of the Colossus, games which are comprised mainly of boss battles. This is not a video about redefining the genre of Cuphead, or even defining a new genre, but a video in which we explore the structure of games which contain only boss battles, and talk about how this affects the flow and play of a game. Interestingly, the design direction of Cuphead was changed in 2015 away from only boss battles, with the studio integrating typical platforming levels. These levels are optional however, and the game can be completed without playing them. Unlike Titan Souls and Shadow of the Colossus, the presence of these regular platforming levels in Cuphead allows us to identify two separate structures within the game. First, we'll need to come up with a loose understanding of what we mean when we talk about boss battles. From this we will then trace a short lineage of games which feature only boss battles and identify their similar structures. Finally, we'll use these examples to talk about how game structures containing mostly boss battles alter the experience and flow of that game. We all know what a boss battle is, or at the very least we know one when we see it. Why then should we spend time constructing barriers around a term that is such an amorphous entity in games? From Metal Gear Solid 3's Battle of Patience with Sniper the End, to the more statistical affairs in the Disgaea series, to dexterous performances in Hyper Light Drifter, games contain a wide array of boss battles. Instead of listing elements which close the definition, we'll show what the boss battle can do, what it may be intended for, and what it can be connected to. I believe it is fair to say that in comparison with other elements in the game, the boss battle is a non-trivial encounter type. It is stronger than the standard enemy types regularly encountered by the player. Because of this, they can be considered as unique and one of a kind within the game system. Further, the boss battle feels structurally rooted in mythic encounters. This is evident when considering the juxtaposition in power between Odysseus against Trojan soldiers and against the Cyclops, and in games like Mario where the plumber is against regular Goombas and then faces off against Bowser. In an article for Gamasutra, Mike Stout outlines a developer's approach to the boss fight. Within the larger consideration of a game's pacing, boss battles can be used to punctuate and release rising tension, providing both a cathartic release of this tension and a period of temporary calm afterwards that resets heart rates. He also outlines that boss battles can be used as a mechanical test for the player, demonstrating their mastery of the performative skill set necessary to progress in the rest of the game. Though boss battles can take a variety of forms and be intended for more than testing the player, I want to focus on the simple understanding that they can be unique encounters within a game system, where greater performative effort is required in comparison to more trivial enemy encounters. As mentioned earlier, Cuphead is mostly comprised of boss battles. This is an interesting game structure that does not often happen in games. There are usually levels of minor enemies which build tension towards a unique encounter with a boss. However, we can trace this game structure back through interesting examples. Titan Souls by Acid Nerve was released in 2015. Comprised solely of boss battles, these encounters with the massive enemies are marked by the one-hit, one-kill system in place. Harking back to the story of David and Goliath, one true shot with the player's arrow is all it takes to bring down a titan. The majority of the time spent in these fights is in discovering the weak point or prime opportunity, unravelling layers of armour, and generally surviving long enough to line up the shot. A large influence of this game was Shadow of the Colossus, released 10 years earlier. The player must similarly defeat all of the Colossi in the Forbidden Land. The game contains 16 Colossi upon which the player character climbs to find their weak spot. The player will not encounter any other enemies en route to the Colossi, and so the game is marked by these spikes in activity during the boss battles. We can also identify the Punch-Out series of games, with Super Punch-Out in particular structuring different patterns of movement and attacks for each fighter the player faces. What we can identify from each of these games is that there are no regular levels to build up tension. The player travels through an empty map or selects the next boss battle through a screen. The result of this are spikes of tension instead of a gradual build-up. In addition to this, each of these games have simple performative toolsets introduced at the start. These toolsets are crucially simple to perform, but are complicated by the performative contortions required of the player in the following boss encounters. Certain equipment may change the end result of a button press in minor ways, but there aren't additions to player moves. Only the bosses stretch the performative capabilities of the player in different ways. Whilst players may quickly grasp how to use these toolsets at the start of the game, the boss battle game structure encourages the perfection of movement of that toolset. This brings us to Cuphead, which has both mandatory boss fights and optional regular levels with trivial enemy types and a scrolling screen. Cuphead is inspired by shoot 'em up games like Metal Slug and Gunstar Heroes, but it implements the structure of boss battle games like Shadow of the Colossus and Titan Souls. What is interesting to note is that in terms of base success, Both the regular levels and the boss levels are measured by the same metric, the player's proximity to objective completion. In the boss battles, it is through the depletion of their health, and in the regular levels, it is in the x-axis position of the player character. The failure screen shown here acts as a hit point bar, whether it is a regular level or a boss level. Success in either is quantitatively measured as it would in a boss battle. Even though the level structures are different, this bar creates an experience which unifies the two level structures. By identifying the boss battle game structure and tracing the genealogy of Cuphead within it, we can see how the game develops this kind of structure and stretches our understanding of how it can be implemented. Cuphead contains a game structure of rolling spikes of tension which challenge the player to master every aspect of the performative toolset. Though not the studio's initial goal, Cuphead should serve as an inspiration, like Titan Souls, Shadow of the Colossus and Super Punch-Out, that there is plenty of room for game structures which contain only boss battles. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There's so much to talk about with Cuphead and I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. If you'd like to watch last week's video on how Nidhogg specialises the hit point bar, then click on the link in the video. In the next video, I'll be talking about how Hollow Knight leverages both its genre conventions and the importance of uncertainty to deliver a unique explorative experience. So if you'd like to be notified when this video is released, then consider subscribing.